Too loud or nah?
Too loud or not?
What I think the way to put it more technically is, what is volume?
Is it too loud?
Is it too loud?
Is it too loud? And what is loud?
What is loud? What is volume? Explain that. Brandon, you go first.
So, I think, excuse me, clearing my throat. Volume is something that is completely subjective. So it is, like, the way we measure volume and sound pressure levels, SPL, is there are a bunch of different ways to do it. But there's the way that I do it and the way that some other people who I've seen that I trust do it is using A weighting, which is, there's A and then there's C weighted. Mm-hmm. There's also a couple others, but
could you break down on like a basic level for people the difference?
Yes. So I'm sorry, I'm clearing my throat.
Brandon's the most technical.
No, I'm not. I'm like a trove of useless knowledge that like once every 4 years.
Don't act like you don't know exactly what it is.
Once every 4 years, it's like, oh, this random fact that I learned when I was 18 is somehow relevant to this conversation. Anyway,
okay, just explain.
So
Yep.
C weighting is absolutely no bias towards any frequency. It's just straight
it's flat
SPL level.
Yeah.
So there's no bias towards any frequencies, meaning it doesn't cut or boost any frequencies at all.
Considering everything from 20 hertz to 20,000 hertz.
Yep. And everything that's even in some cases below and above that limit, depending on
I didn't know that.
what you have that. So because it's not biased at all. 20K to 20 hertz is human hearing. So that's what
oh, yes. Yeah, that's fair.
You know, like a dog whistle, most people can't hear because it's like 21K, right? But dogs can hear it. So anyway, that has nothing to do with this conversation.
We should hire some dogs.
But, yeah. Yes.
Sure,
Who's mixing your service today? Anyway, that's a joke. We're not doing that. Anyway.
That would be hilarious.
It would be not hilarious.
If we could somehow like put some type of Neuralink.
Okay. A Neuralink in a dog. No, bro.
Oh anyway, my gosh, that would be so funny. Yeah.
Moving along.
Yep.
So A weighting is another type of measurement for SPL, for sound pressure level, and it basically is curved towards human hearing. So it boosts and cuts frequencies along the generic human ear curve. Yeah. So there's a lot of, it's like a low pass or high pass filter at like 100 or 94 or whatever hertz.
It's gonna reflect a lot more. The level is gonna reflect a lot more of how we're going to perceive something being loud or quiet.
Yes, exactly. So it doesn't. So low end, like typically low frequencies, do not affect your hearing. They can fatigue your ears, but they don't actually like damage your hearing. Gabrielle
just ran a video.
In, bro? What? I'm just kidding.
You've got one job. I'm joking.
You had one job. Anyway, dude, there's a movie out there. School of Rock is playing. Anyway.
I have a lot of background noise.
Actually,
in this
no,
episode.
it's true. We have School of Rock playing.
We have School of Rock playing, and it's the scene where he finds Zach for the first time. And he invites him to come play guitar.
We're going to have to make a lot of edits to this podcast. But it's good. Anyway.
That can stay in.
For sure. So A weighting, it's curved towards human hearing. And so when you say like it's 100 dB out here in this arena. Mm-hmm. Is that C weighted or A weighted? Yeah. And C weighted, if it's 100 dB, that means it's probably 92 A weighted typically. Yeah. So because C weighting is unbiased.
If it's semi-musical.
It includes all that low end.
Yeah.
If it includes all that low end, and low end, the appearance of low end is much, much more prevalent in a room. Mm-hmm. So, but because it doesn't hurt your ears, it doesn't damage your ears. Yeah. It's not included on the A weighting scale.
So what would you recommend, like dudes mixing at church, what would you recommend that they meter in, that they measure?
I think it's good to know what both are. Mm-hmm. I typically to
make sure they're not disproportionate to one another.
Yeah, know what a comfortable mix feels like, A weighted, and then go to C and see what it is. Don't make your decisions based off of C. Does that make sense?
That's fair.
Like,
yeah.
So at church at Upper Room, I always go for like 90 to 92 dB A weighted.
Yep.
Which would probably be right around 100, maybe a little more on loud moments if Sebastian hits the SPD.
Yeah, when he hits the 808, exactly. That's
Probably
the only time.
120 then, but no, not
exactly.
that loud.
Yeah,
but it's a small room, and so
We
90
love you,
dB
Sebastian.
does a lot in a small room. It's like, especially if it's a balanced mix, it feels good. 90 dB is gonna really rock
in
the
the
room.
small room with the right size PA, right?
Yep. So, and a lot of that, like A weighting, also affects like if you have the right PA and the right amount of speakers hitting the right frequencies. The scene is going off right now.
Dude, that scene is amazing. Oh my goodness, School of Rock.
But if it's the right scene, if it's the right PA.
If you've loaded the right scene on the console,
exactly.
Go ahead.
No, if you have like two speakers pushing 90 dB or whatever, those speakers will not be doing an even like broadcast of all of the frequencies.
Yes.
So it's not like two QSE K12s aren't going to do as much as like the WiFo ARCs that we have
at Upper Room. Yeah.
So and there's 3 on each side, and those are super old. They're like 8 years old.
But they're gangster.
Well, they're very tired because they've been there forever. They've been on. Granted, we're never like really loud, so they haven't been driven hard.
Yeah.
But they've just been on and been used.
Have we
for
ever
8 years.
popped a cone?
No.
Yeah.
I think this
says a lot.
This is for the deep divers.
Yeah.
I think the right mid range or the right middle speaker right where front of house is, that right middle box. I think the top end's going out on it.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Just a little bit. But we had the room like
I'm mixing tomorrow night, and I'll
pro tuned.
I'll give you my pro opinion.
Okay. We had the room uber like pro tuned by a guy named Matt Wheeler, who is just the GOAT when it comes to
Yes, he's the
tuning.
DFW king of tuning.
He's arguably the world. I mean, he's the world renowned.
Well,
and Matt,
didn't
if
he
you
do
ever listen
something
to
for
this-
Lord of the Rings?
I don't know. That was no, I think that was Kevin Hughes.
Oh, Kevin Hughes.
Yeah, but the same is also GOAT.
Kevin Hughes also GOAT. Yeah.
Excuse me.
If you've had to do with Lord of the Rings, just carry on.
Gosh.
Yes, you're just the king. Yeah.
Anyway, so it's like all of those things are super important. The balance of what the PA can actually do. Can your PA broadcast, pink noise at 100 decibels, A-weighted? And that's a good way to tell if it's actually
reinforcing all those frequencies properly.
100%. Yeah. Because a lot of times your mid-range can get to 100 dB, but your low mids can't.
Correct.
Or your top end can, and everything else below that can't.
Can I talk about that a second? Okay, so I think one thing that a lot of people miss with their PA system is how well is their PA reinforcing everything from, let's just say, 40 hertz or 50 hertz. You can even start at 50 hertz up to 20K and all the way through. And, chances are what your PA is doing a pretty good job at is information above 800 hertz. It would be, it has to be in pretty bad shape to not be doing that. But information below 500 hertz, especially between 500 hertz and 100 hertz, this is really where the money is spent on PA systems in my mind. And, there's two companies that have really championed the PA game over the last really 5 to 6 years, which is Acoustics and D&B. And both of those, I feel like the reason why everyone's liked them so much, a lot of it has to do with the top end, but it's mostly because they don't really wimp out on those low mid frequencies. And
Acoustics invented the line array.
Exactly.
The VDOS in 1995 was the first line array system.
And the first deployment was in Dallas, Texas.
Was it? I didn't know that.
The first deployment in the U.S. was in Dallas, Texas at
nice.
Gillies.
Really?
Yes, a VDOS. Yeah, first one in the U.S.
It's still there.
It is still there, and I mixed on it,
ago.
and it sounds really good.
It's funny. I mixed on it too. It's because it doesn't have to get loud ever. And
no.
VDOS cones.
Way too much PA for that room, but yeah.
VDOS cones are so easy to fix. I used to work at a company here in DFW that as an acoustics dealer, and they would have me like one of their VDOS rigs would come back from tour with some like
cone absolutely shattered.
Like Bass Nectar was one of the tours they did, and like everything. This whole PA, they did like 12 dates, 12 different concerts in arenas and stuff, and they'd have this, 48 boxes of VDOS with every box had something wrong. But it was, here's the thing,
that's so funny.
It wasn't like completely destroyed, but you could, what's nice about those old PAs that you could like just, they're all fed by NL8 connections, and you could literally just turn off, like disconnect one little wire. If you had a top end speaker blown in one of them, you could just go up there and turn off, like literally disconnect one connector to that box. Yeah, it was so easy to work on.
Yeah.
It's like an old Chevy,
Yeah.
Except
I know nothing about.
Yeah, except I'm not a mechanic.
Fixing cars. But
bro, fun story. I was a mechanic for like a year.
I could see that. You're that technical.
The one time I tried to they always let me like change tires, but they never let me actually do anything else. So I did oil changes, but one time it was a Subaru. I drained the transmission fluid instead of the oil.
No, you didn't.
I did.
Snap.
It was red. When you look back, I was like, what's something wrong?
No, I was just checking the time.
No, bro. It was bad. So I gave that guy a free transmission fluid flush.
Ah, very good.
Yeah, we didn't tell him. This is in 2006.
He got new transmission fluid.
Exactly. Anyway.
He drove a Subaru, so he was very responsible.
Yeah, I drove a Subaru for about a year and a half.
Oh, very good.
Yeah, get out of that real quick, though.
Now you drive a BMW, the least responsible car.
Yeah, well, actually, that Subaru was worse. It
really?
was worse. Yeah, dude.
Oh, was it the fast one? Yeah.
It was. I bought a horrible financial mistake. My wife will attest to that. But I bought it. It was super fun to drive for a year and a half. But I realized like 2 months after getting it, I'm sitting in traffic. I can't
go anywhere.
I have the 6-speed manual transmission, and I am in bumper to bumper traffic.
Yeah,
all day.
That makes it tough.
Day, but it's
a lot.
Yeah, it was.
You're not going anywhere. You're just burning gas. Yeah,
it was useless. Anyway,
that's why we all need Teslas.
That's why we all need.
So
Teslas.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really important for everyone to realize, like, when it comes to volume, you need to understand that your audience, your end user is the human ear. Ultimately,
Truth.
Your end user is the human ear. The art that you do, like if you're a painter, the art that you're doing is for the human eye, right? If you are mixing audio, the art that you're doing is for the human ear in the context of a room when it comes to live sound. When it comes to records, in the context of it could be a bunch of different things, right? Which is why record mixing is so hard. And why Brandon does it and I don't. But point is, I think that's really important to notice or to think about. And, C-weighted, A-weighted, really good things to consider and bounce back and forth and make sure that your A-weighted reading and your C-weighted reading are corresponding. You know what I'm saying? Sure. I think that's probably the biggest lesson. Look, and this is one big thing that I learned from Brandon coming to Upper Room and seeing what he was doing there and just in general. The guys that have gotten really, really good at mixing worship have figured out how to make it sound really, really big and be really, really quiet. Comparatively. Yeah. And if you can make the mix excite everybody in the room and it be around 90 decibels, like within striking distance, which means like within 1 or 2 dB of 90 decibels, you're crushing it. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And I think our mission at Audiolink is partially that, that the mix could be scraping 90 and everyone's hands be going up. It exciting the young people in the room, the old people in the room. Yeah. Everyone's okay with it, Mm-hmm. It's a really politically correct thing to do.
So true, bro. Sound is the most political thing at church.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Like they can talk politics, but no, sound is more important.
Yeah, but if you can keep all the old people really, really happy, I think that's a huge deal because churches need to be multi-generational to be effective, right? Yep. You need the older folks, you need the young folks, and if the mix can sound really modern, but reach both of those groups because of the volume.
Yeah.
The old people are going to tell you the A weighting.
Yeah.
They're going to tell you. That's based off of,
They'll
they
walk
can't.
up with their iPhone and an app. And they'll see, hey, bro.
How many times does that happen to you? Like, give me a number.
Over the course of the last 15 years, probably 50 times. Like
That's fair.
maybe more. But I honestly, most of it is like, you got to put yourself in their shoes. They're feeling, they might be sitting or standing in a part of the room that's very low end heavy.
Correct.
And low end gives people,
yeah,
low end will make people uncomfortable faster than anything else.
Yeah, it can make you feel sick.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, with the big PA system.
Yeah. And in small rooms, it's easier to get away with it. But with the thing that people don't think about is what is considered loud, even using your A-weighted decibel meter.
Yeah.
That you could have recently bought from Radio Shack. RIP. Anyway. Like that whole it's all subjective. So it's like,
yeah,
it's not even how loud it is on the meter. It's how loud does it feel?
Exactly.
And most of the time, volume is completely, is it even? It's like what is perceived volume is a direct correlation to, is it an even from low frequencies to high frequencies? Is it an even spectrum of sound that you're hearing?
Yeah.
And if it's too much upper mids, 2K, 4K, 5K, it's going to feel louder.
People are going to think that it's loud.
And it could be quieter on the decibel meter, but it could feel louder because it's piercing.
Yeah. A-weight is not going to give you a full picture.
Exactly. So that's why it's really good to walk your room, to pay attention when people say, hey, it's too loud, or hey, it's too quiet.
Yes. Walk around.
Tommy's told me that it's too quiet a couple times.
Well, at upper room, the front of house booth is hot. It's hot in the upper mids, but then the low end, it's very quiet. So
it's because there's a wall right in front of it.
There's a wall.
That wall absorbs a lot of low.
Exactly.
Energy,
so you need to consider that. And, pretty much what you need to do is make a slightly thin, you need to think like you're mixing on some NS10s. Like it's going to be slightly thin. And it's going to be upper midsy, and you have to accept that.
Yep.
The guitars.
So that means you push guitars. That means you might push keys
almost till
bit.
They're uncomfortable, and then it's going to sound correct everywhere that's really receiving the low end.
Yep.
So, like, as we're talking like this, I think it's important that everyone, like, in the room that you're in, you need to think about that.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
You need to think, what's that reality? And recently I was mixing, and one of the audio guys was sitting in probably the loudest part of the room, and he was like, hey, when the bass guitar is running, I can't hear the vocals. And I was like, okay, well, that's not good.
Yeah.
So I had to turn the bass down, and and that was just because I lacked the awareness of, I was not thinking about the room. I was thinking about the experience of where I was standing.
Yeah.
And that's a bad mistake. You can't do that when you're mixing live sound, whether you're in an arena or you're in a 100-person room.
Yep.
I think that's important.
Yeah.
So at every level, there's a spectrum that needs to be considered.
For sure.
So, anything else about volume?
The room and how the room sounds empty is very important. Yeah. Because make whatever it sounds like empty, flip that on its head. That's what it sounds like full.
Yes.
There's been literally so many times, even in the last year for me, that we go to an arena and you dial the PA, it feels great, and then people get in and it's just so dark. There's no clarity at all.
Yep.
That sort of situation is very common.
Yep.
And a couple of big churches here in DFW, the same sort of situation where it feels really bright, and then it just
people
gets
fill the room.
Dark, and then people fill the room and it gets super dark.
Yeah. So, like, high frequency wise, I think there can be a swing. So in smaller rooms, this is not going to be nearly as drastic, right? But if you mix in a room that seats more than 1,000 people, there could be a high frequency swing if the acoustics and the dynamics of the room are just as so.
Yes.
It could be a swing of up to like 5 dB.
Yep.
I mean, I feel like when I heard you mix at that one event, it was easily 5 dB.
Yeah.
It was easily 5.
This is one church that we were at. I was mixing. It was for a recording. There's a lot of people. There's like 4,000 people that showed up, and we had a sound check. It felt really good, and then people got in the room, and it just everything above 3K just disappeared.
Yep.
And it was
vocal came in, and I was like, "What is going on here?"
It was so dark. And what's funny is that like you make all these changes, and this is obviously I'm still learning. Like there's a process.
Yeah.
Everything is a process. So in rehearsals, I'm even doing virtual sound check. I'm like, after the band's leaving, I'm just playing the files back and just listening and dialing the room more. I'm like doing things that I wouldn't normally do on a vocal. I remember cutting some upper mids because I like hearing all that upper mid
information
energy.
And managing
in
it.
The snare drum, in the vocals. Like it's where the intelligibility is. It's where a lot of the energy
is. Yeah.
And I remember cutting some of that in the vocals and going for what I thought sounded good in rehearsal with an empty room. And then as soon as the first downbeat hit, I was like, what? I immediately went back to all the stuff that I normally did.
Yeah.
And that showed me that my fundamentals were saying the right thing.
Yes, the room was saying otherwise.
The room was saying otherwise. And so in the future, were I to do that again, I would probably go back and make 50% of the changes that I would have made.
Yeah.
And the thing is, like, we talked about this last time, like unlearning the stuff that you learn from working in bad environments.
Yes.
Unlearning and being okay with like having an open ear and not just falling into habits. That's so important.
Oh, man.
But also there's a purpose for some of those habits. There's 100%. A purpose. So it's a balance. All that to say,
when to and when not to.
Exactly.
That's audio.
That's super important.
Yeah.
So,
no, I thought. Yeah, no, that's great, and I think all of us. We're gonna wrap up here, but I think all of us, we need to think about what we're doing before we do it. You want to react, but you also want to think about what you're doing before you do it. Right?
For sure. Yeah.
I think that's so important, and if we're going to mix successfully, we need to consider the fact that our audience is a room. It is not the position that we're in. And when it comes to volume, if something's too loud, we need to consider this is a room. There's a lot of seats, and we might need to make a decision for the majority.
Yeah.
And that, ideally, that's not like a fraction close to 50-50. Hopefully it's closer to 90-10.
Yeah.
You know, but if you mix in a church every week, you want to know, like, you know, what is the 90% hearing, right? And you need to be thinking about that, not just the seat that you're in. Yeah. I think those are the big lessons.
And that's why it's important to, if you're in the opportunity where you're building a room from scratch.
Oh, man.
Like having these discussions before you're in your room is so important. Because this is the stuff that gets you to a 90-10 split instead of a 45-65 or 45-55, excuse me. That was horrible
where
math.
Someone's always losing.
Yeah.
Yeah, where someone's losing.
Like, or a large percentage of the room is losing. Because we have to make a choice. And ultimately, nothing really, really satisfying comes from a 45-55 split.
No.
Like, as a mix engineer, you want that 90-10 decision because you know that if you walk up 10 feet, it's going to sound perfect. That's what you want. Or if you go over to the right side 40 feet, it's going to sound perfect. That's where, you know, that's important. If you're doing like a compromise between 5 or 10% of the room, like splitting the difference, that's just slightly more of the room is hearing a better thing. That's not really. Like a lot of that comes from just poor room design. Kind of dealing with some people just don't have a choice, and that's what they
sometimes
have.
PA design.
Mm-hmm. PA design too. Yep.
Well, that's a few thoughts on volume, and if things are too loud. Hope you guys enjoyed that.
Yep.
See you next time.
Adios. That was lame.